Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. My name is Ezra, and I'm joined by Caleb and Sawyer. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. How about y'all?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's awesome.
I'm doing as well as I can be. Thumbs up. So today we have kind of a different episode for you guys. We don't have a lot of news to talk about because guess what? 2020 continues to get canceled.
That's it.
If you didn't think it was canceled last week or the week before, it's definitely canceled now. So we have some other things to chat about with you today. So
hmm
we have, I think, 6 topics across the three of us to get to. So
Yeah.
Sawyer, you mind leading us off with your movie topic this week?
Yeah. So, do we want the first movie topic that I mentioned, or do we want to start with the infamous we've been talking
Let's
about
go
doing
with the
lately?
the first one, and then we'll get to some larger discussions as we go on through the day.
So, the
Okay.
first one I'm going to mention is 1981's cult horror classic, The Evil Dead, directed by Sam Raimi.
Sam
This
Raimi.
is a film that is definitely an inspiration for me as being a film student. What made this film so interesting to me is it was, for those of you who don't know, it was shot in the late 70s, early 80s for a ridiculously small budget. I believe it was like 250,000 or something like that. Like just made for, and yeah, granted, 250,000 is a lot of money, but
Right.
Yes. All of
for
us would
for
be
a
happy
film
to have
shoot,
that amount of money.
yes, but for a
I
film
would
budget,
agree.
that's ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
Um, and it was you can tell when you're watching the film that there was just so much care and creativity put into it.
hmm
And like it's if you're watching it as like it's not a perhaps the greatest horror film, but it's just so much fun. And the fact that they just a bunch of people got together and this movie somehow was able to actually be made and let alone wasn't terrible. It's just like all of like it's almost like the first Evil Dead is just like a really highly publicized student film.
Okay.
Um,
Which is
yeah,
pretty
it's
wild.
yeah, like it's the makeup. I love the makeup in it because it's
hmm
so over the top, but and it's like it's clearly just like student makeup, but it also is like ridiculous enough and fun to actually be kind of like a cheesy 80s horror film. I love Ash as a main character. Um, I love this is a side thing, but I think the posters, the minimalist style of the poster is great.
hmm
Uh, and of course Sam Raimi's directing style.
Oh yeah.
Some of
Yeah.
the hyper nature of some things, so you can really feel Ash's paranoia as he starts to lose it in some of those scenes. That and then also some of the way the camera work is done is very Sam Raimi. I guess for those of you who don't have never seen the movies, the I guess the best example I can show from another Sam Raimi movie about how Evil Dead is like is the scene in Spider-Man 2 when
oh, you're.
they're when Doc Ock is passed out and the
Yep.
doctors are trying to take the arms off of his back and the arms are just like taking out all the different doctors.
That's a very
That
Sam Raimi
scene,
scene.
yeah, that scene is well, one, it's yeah, like you said, it's extremely Sam Raimi, but it is also textbook Evil Dead.
Okay.
Like that scene is very similar to something you would see in like Evil Dead 2, in terms of like the person getting like up close with a fisheye lens, getting dragged away, or like the multi shot, just all this creative shot composition.
Okay.
Yeah. I the first one may not be as good personally to me as the
hmm
second movie. I think the second movie really understands what the series was because
Okay.
it's kind of got it keeps the creativity and cheesy horror nature of the first one, but it also adds in that sense of slapstick and satirical comedy that Army of Darkness, the third movie, will later go for. Um, yeah, I think if you were to watch any of them, the second one is by far probably my favorite in the series. But the most accessible is probably Army of Darkness, considering it can kind of be watched without any of the other movies. And it's also probably the funniest.
Now, are they all with the same? Is it all Sam Raimi film? Like, are they all Sam Raimi's films, or has new directors gone and?
So the core original trilogy was all directed by Sam Raimi.
Okay.
There was a remake / reboot in 2013 directed by Fede Alvarez, who also did Don't Breathe.
Okay.
But then of the movies, the remake reboot, it's kind of a gray area as to whether or not it's a remake or a reboot, because there's arguments that can be made for both. But yeah, that's the one. And there's a TV show that aired from 2015 to, I believe, 2018 called Ash vs. Evil Dead. And Sam Raimi, I believe, directed the pilot, I think. And he also produced the rest of the show, but he didn't direct every episode.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I
definitely recommend it. For those of you who don't like horror, I'm typically not a fan of, like, the psychological horror stuff like Hereditary.
Right, me too.
But I do like the kind of like zombie, like creature or slasher movies. And Evil Dead is kind of like, it's basically an homage as well as like a perfect example of like a cheesy 80s monster slasher.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know from my experience, yeah, I'm not typically a big fan of psychological horror or even like demonic horror, but like when it comes to like just like zombie type movies or like
just like
even slasher, yeah. I typically find enjoyment in those films. They're fun, I think.
Like, I would say personally, looking at these movies, at least the original trilogy and Ash vs. Evil Dead, that they're not really scary. I mean, like, they're definitely not for anybody who's squeamish, because these movies get extremely bloody. But
that's what I have heard. Yeah.
Yes. The series is not for anybody who is squeamish, but I wouldn't exactly consider it scary either, at least in my opinion.
Okay.
It's certainly spooky, and there's a couple of moments that'll make you jump, but it's not like a movie that's going to keep you up all night. It's not one of those movies.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
It's somewhere on the spectrum of the list that I want to of movies that I will eventually watch, but haven't gotten around to it. But yeah,
the first one is now on Netflix, I believe. The first one.
Okay, all right. Interesting.
Yeah, it's the thing to keep in mind with this series is the first one. I guess the kind of the series kind of changes its tone and idea as it goes along. Like the first movie was, I think, clearly trying to just be an 80s horror film when it was coming out. Right. Whereas when you get to the second one, like continues that and basically has the exact same plot as the first movie, but it adds in this sense of humor that it makes some of these scenes just way more funny than they would have been, or should probably even have the right to be.
Probably.
That's pretty great.
And then Army of Darkness just goes insane, and it's basically is a completely different plot with the main character getting sent back to the Middle Ages and having to fight like these like demon zombie creatures instead of like another warring kingdom.
Right.
Okay.
It's ridiculous, and it's very much in terms of like the animatronics they use, or not animatronics, but animation they use. It's very similar, kind of like an homage to the classic Ray Harryhausen Clash of the Titans and Sinbad and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I if you were to watch any of them, I would recommend probably Army of Darkness, simply because it's certainly, in my opinion, the funniest one. It's also the least scary, and it doesn't really require knowledge of the rest of the series to really know. You just kind of have to know how Evil Dead 2 ended to see how he is in the Middle Ages. That's really it.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think the best one is probably Evil Dead 2. Funniest one and most accessible is Army of Darkness.
Okay.
But yeah, overall the series is just it's a series that it's definitely a cult series. It's not really going to be a series that ever could reach mainstream appeal just due to how I guess how graphic it is, and also in the later movies, especially in the TV show, some of the things that Ash will say are not exactly PG. But they
I see.
it's a really fun series that I think fans of of slapstick horror in the later stuff, as well as just how do I say it? Like the weird monster slasher movies of the 80s, I think will definitely find this series to be a good time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if anyone is interested, yeah, the first one is streaming on Netflix. I don't believe that 2 is streaming on anything other than Shudder. But it might be on Stars, and I know Army of Darkness is on Stars as well.
Okay.
And
okay.
Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV show, is also on Netflix and Stars, where it originally aired.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, it seems like the first Evil Dead only came to Netflix like 2 months ago, or 3 months ago now.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll probably get the next couple sometime down the line, I would assume.
I'll have to.
What makes it so difficult in terms of getting them streaming is each of the main original 3 is owned by a different studio.
Oh yeah, that's
always a headache.
That's a big problem.
I don't remember who owns. I think Anchor Bay now owns the first movie.
Okay.
I don't know who owns the second one, and Universal owns Army of Darkness.
Oh yeah, Universal is probably going to be the hardest to get on any streaming service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So, Sawyer, is that all you had to say about the Evil Dead franchise?
Yep.
All right.
For now.
Awesome. For now, yeah. And who knows?
Yes.
I might end up watching it by the time we bring up the subject again. Especially
I'm
now.
making my way through the whole series again since I haven't watched season 3 of Ash vs. Evil Dead. I'm making my way through the entire series again now.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just saying, especially the fact that it's on Netflix right now. It'll make it easier for me to go off and find it.
Yes. So, so we're moving along a little bit here. I recently got a new computer that's all fancy for editing and playing games and the like, and I got a certain game called Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and I played it. I beat it in sometime around 6 hours, and I have to say I enjoyed it. Big surprise. like you could hear the gas off in the distance, right? Like, oh, Ezra liked a platinum game. What?
In the Metal Gear franchise? Whoa!
Wow, crazy. So some basic takeaways from it. I was surprised to learn that I basically knew the entire plot going in because I had some. Well, I had spoiled myself on the ending basically, but I also just had a ton of periphery knowledge about what happens in that game from like watching videos and stuff. So like I was surprised to know that like the story was really that simplistic. It's not bad. It's just simple, I guess is the only.
Which can be kind of shocking considering it's coming with the name Metal Gear.
Yes, that's maybe the most shocking thing. Now I will say I think this game is probably does one of the better jobs of uh nailing, like, probably has the best humor of any Metal Gear I've seen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, because Platinum seems to have a good grasp on the kind of humor, like they seem to have a grasp on the fact that all of this is kind of funny, so we should just go with it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and like, you have quotes like memes, Jack. The memes, like you have stuff like that, and Senator Armstrong is such a like iconically funny villain. Uh, and then you have to think about the fact that like the game was released in, I think it was like 2013 or something like that,
I believe
and
so. Yeah.
and it literally just predicts the 2016 election down
Yeah.
to down to down to uh down to make America great again. Like,
Like they even have that line in the
yeah,
game.
the line "Make
Right.
America Great Again" is in the game, is in a 2013 game, which is crazy.
Like
Uh,
what I love about Rising Revengeance is just simply that it understands how ridiculous Metal Gear innately is and just
Mhm.
plays to
yeah,
that. And actually, by doing it, makes a really good story in the
Metal
Metal
Gear.
Gear series.
Yeah,
Like more than
it's
I
really great.
expected, despite the fact that it's not even coming from Kojima.
Yeah, that's I think the true genius of Revengeance is that, like, it's not. I think it proves that if, like, people who aren't Kojima understand Metal Gear, I guess is my thing. So why
Mhm.
Yeah.
don't you just, like, well, for one thing, why don't you just give Platinum the franchise? For another thing, why don't you just, like, try to get somebody on board who understands the series to at least do something with it?
Mm.
If you're not going to do anything with it, just give it to somebody who understands it or something like that.
If they were to do
Um,
anything, I would just want them to either make a sequel to Revengeance, or if they didn't do that, remake the original two MSX games from the 80s.
yes, that's a
Like,
good
Mhm.
'cause,
idea.
like those things I think are primed for a remake, and I would not be opposed to somebody doing that who isn't Kojima, especially since the
Yeah,
story is already there. All they have
yeah,
to do is adapt it.
yeah, definitely. So, we'll, that's probably all stuff that's never going to happen at this point, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Just to talk about some other things about it, I think the game looks fine. Like, it's not super pretty, but it looks fine for what it is. The the character models are all pretty good until you zoom up on their faces, and then it's like, oh yeah, this is from 2013.
This was a
This is a
PS3 game.
yeah, this is a platinum PS3 game. Like, yeah. That's also trying to look realistic. That's where
Right.
that's where they get you. The soundtrack is bonkers, and I love it.
I love
Um,
every single song.
I do I love every single song? Yeah, I don't know if I love every single song, but the I love that it's dynamic. Like, you'll be midway through a boss fight, and, like, the best example of this is there's a boss where you can knock the sword out of his hand, and uh, lyrics to the boss theme play whenever he has the sword in his hand, but when it's out of his hand, there are no lyrics, and I think that's great. That's the kind of thing I really like in game soundtracks, is just, like, changing stuff around a little bit to fit the atmosphere or
Right.
whatever's going on or something like that. That's sort of where the rules of nature thing kind of comes from, is like, yeah, it's so epic because it's at that exact moment that that the song goes "Rules of Nature" and then just blasts off. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I have to say also, these are my favorite platinum boss fights, and some of the best boss fights I've played since Kingdom Hearts 3, which wasn't that long ago, but like I hold Kingdom
Really?
Hearts boss fights uh up to a very very
High standard,
like
yeah.
nothing has really touched a good Kingdom Hearts boss for me in a very very long time. Uh
We'll
and
have to
I
touch on
think
that later, but yeah.
yeah, and Final Fantasy VII Remake notwithstanding, I think uh MGR really gets right uh boss flow, except with the Metal Gear fights. Like the Metal
Mm,
Gear fights, I didn't mind Ray because it was easy, but the second Metal Gear fight in the game is so uh like needlessly obtuse that it was hard for me to get into it. And then I think the Senator Armstrong fight is a little bit too unbalanced. Like he's just a little too strong for normal mode. But otherwise, like great boss fights, all of them really really solid.
I
Uh,
think that first one with Metal Gear Ray was is that easy simply just because I think it was fan service, a little bit of fan service.
well, it's fan
mhm.
service and it's the tutorial boss. So like
Yeah.
you can't
That's
really
true.
you can't fault it for that. You can't fault it for that, but it's still like that's kind of the reason I found it inoffensive was just because like yeah, it might be kind of boring, but it was the tutorial boss. So what are you gonna do with it? Also,
Yeah.
with rules of nature in the background, everything is basically forgiven.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's basically how I feel about MGR like that, and that's kind of my conclusion on the Metal Gear franchise as of right now. Like I've
Okay.
watched almost everything. I haven't. I know what happens in five, and five didn't grip me enough to like really get through it. So MGR is probably the last Metal Gear game I will absorb, and I have to say it left a pretty good taste in my mouth. So
Okay.
thumbs
So
up.
don't play
Th-
Survive.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't have any plans to play Survive. So yeah, thumbs up, Platinum. Good job. I don't think I've played a Platinum game that I don't like yet. Which might happen at some point. I don't necessarily have plans to play like Bayo and stuff. Like that's just not that like I have a hard enough time getting into Devil May Cry with how technical that combat is, and so it's like yeah, we'll see. But thumbs up to MGR. If you are at all a fan of Metal Gear, I would recommend it. And if you're a fan of action games, I would also recommend it because you don't necessarily have to play it. You have to know what happens in the first four to
Okay.
understand what's happening in MGR.
Yeah.
Although
That being said, though,
you
oh,
probably
go ahead.
want to have that context. Like you're gonna be missing some stuff.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but you could you could play and enjoy it without playing the first four, I would say.
That being said, I do think it really works well as an epilogue for Metal Gear Solid 4.
I agree with
Um,
that.
like it doesn't step on the toes of the ending of that series too much, and it kind of it's light spoilers for MGS4. Caleb, are you all right with that?
I'm cool.
Okay, yeah, some light spoilers for MGS4 is
MGS4.
that it doesn't well it doesn't really step on the toes of the ending. It does kind of give you a idea of what happened to the world once the Patriots were gone.
Yeah.
Like a world without that huge AI system. It's like how do they adjust when that global spanning network is just gone? And
Yeah.
it was kind of an interesting way they went about it by just saying like, oh well, naturally something would fill its void, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
Senator Armstrong is going for. I also like how they do not definitively state the fate of Solid Snake at this point in time.
Yeah, I like that too. Like they don't mention him really, and they don't allude to some guy who died or something like that, right? Like
like the only time they
they
mention him,
don't.
I believe, is in like one audio log with Raiden, and then like the dialogue is just as much gives credence just as much to him being alive as him not being alive. Like there really isn't a definitive answer.
Yeah. So again, great game. Would recommend. If you're looking for an action game series, don't play it before you play Devil May Cry.
Okay.
But if you're looking for like a Metal Gear game, play MGR. So yeah. Anyways, with that, I think we can get into some of our. Caleb, did you have a smaller topic that isn't as giant as the other two, or can we get on to some of our bigger discussions?
Well, actually, you know what we could do is we could save those two still and just like skip me and just go on to the next thing with Sawyer's topic.
Okay, yeah. Sawyer, you've been playing a small series. I don't know if can you remind me of what it is? I don't know if I've heard about it before.
Well, just a little small series from a tiny developer called Ubisoft. The name of the franchise is Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah, that franchise. I don't know how it's. I don't know if were there sequels. I don't know.
Maybe one or two.
I hear there was only three in the series. Is that true?
Is that? Yeah.
Well, technically, there's only 4 numbered games in the series, so you're not too far off.
Well, actually,
let me just pull up the Wikipedia real quick, and I know, just made a big sin using the Wikipedia article. But according to Wikipedia, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 Assassin's Creed games.
And that's probably counting mobile games.
Yeah, that's gotta
over 11 years.
Count that. Yeah.
Yeah, if we're counting mainline series, it's about half that, I believe.
Yeah, it's about half.
There are 2, 3. Well, do you count iOS games?
No.
That were also once Nintendo DS games?
So basically the way I did it, and I'm doing it, so basically I should state and preface this conversation by saying I decided, due to the fact that I had Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey from a Black Friday deal last year, and the DLC for Odyssey and Origins both just went on sale with PlayStation Spring Sale, so I decided, hey, I haven't played Assassin's Creed since I was in middle school. I might as well go back and play the entire series, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Only this time, to differentiate my playthroughs from when I was in middle school, I went back and got all of the story-related DLC for the main games, which actually was surprisingly not as expensive as I thought it was going to be, because the newer ones were on sale, and Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered with all of its DLC came with the DLC that was on sale for Odyssey Season Pass. So really it was like Freedom Cry, the Da Vinci Disappearance, and like one for Assassin's Creed Revelations, especially since Assassin's Creed 2 for PC was free on Uplay. So really, I was actually pretty cheap.
Right.
But anyway, what I'm consisting in this marathon is all of the mainline titles. Let me go ahead, and I think I have the list here on my phone of the order that I'm doing them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm playing them in the chronological, but with Assassin's Creed, it's kind of weird because the chronological order is not the dates.
Yeah, because 4 comes before 3. Well, actually, are you talking? Okay, so here's the big question: are you going chronological order in the past, or are you going in chronological order of the present?
Chronological by the present.
Okay, so you would still play 3 and then 4. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm going chronological by the time in which the modern day story takes place.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if there's any games surrounding them that don't have a modern day story and just take place in the past, then I'm putting those where they would be in relation to the games that have the modern day story.
Okay.
So, for example, Assassin's Creed Liberation doesn't have a modern day story, so I just placed it in between Assassin's Creed 3 and Rogue because it's around that era.
Right.
So but the order I'm playing them, the only mobile games that I included, and technically Assassin's Creed Liberation was a PS Vita exclusive, but it did get ported to consoles later on, so I'm counting that as a console game. We're just Assassin's Creed Altair's Chronicles and Assassin's Creed 2 Bloodlines. No, it wasn't Bloodlines. Assassin's Creed 2 Discovery and Assassin's Creed Bloodlines. So 2 DS games and a PSP game. Everything else is console, including the Chronicles spin-off. So, yeah, I might as well just read it. Assassin's Creed Altair Chronicles, Assassin's Creed Bloodlines for the PSP, Assassin's Creed 2 plus its DLCs Battle of Forlì and Bonfire of the Vanities, Assassin's Creed 2 Discovery, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and its DLCs Copernicus Conspiracy and the Da Vinci Disappearance, Assassin's Creed Revelations and its DLC The Lost Ark, Assassin's Creed 3 and the Benedict Arnold Tyranny of King Washington DLC.
Are you skipping Brotherhood?
Oh, did I not mention Brotherhood?
I don't think so.
I
might have missed it.
Oh, okay. Well, Brotherhood is before Revelations. I didn't mention that one. Okay. Then Assassin's Creed Liberation, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag with the Aveline and Freedom Cry DLCs, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Assassin's Creed Unity and its Dead Kings expansion, Assassin's Creed Syndicate with the Dreadful Crimes, Jack the Ripper, and the Last Maharaja expansions, Assassin's Creed Chronicles China, India, and Russia. I threw the Assassin's Creed movie in there because why not?
I forgot they made that.
Assassin's Creed Origins with the Hidden Ones and Curse of the Pharaohs expansions, and then finally ending with Assassin's Creed Odyssey with the Legacy of the First Blade and Fate of Atlantis expansion.
We'll have to talk about that movie because I got some hot take opinions on that are contrary to the majority.
To the general consensus.
Yeah.
Once I get to the point in the timeline when that movie takes place, we will definitely have to have a conversation about it.
Oh yeah.
You know that movie is a movie.
I have seen the movie before. I just don't really remember it, which I guess is pretty telling.
Michael Fassbender gives the performance of his life that nobody cared about.
Thank you.
In that movie.
Thank you.
Yeah, he really tried, and it didn't happen.
Anyways, so you played the first one, right? Is that what I?
I played So I played 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, 3 Black Flag, Rogue, and Unity. I played all of them before, just not with their DLCs.
Oh, okay.
Except for Unity. I did play Unity's Dead Kings expansion. And but most of them, aside from most of those games, mainly the first one through Rogue, middle school, early high school. So I'm going back and doing them again with their DLCs, as well as the mobile games for DS and PSP that they didn't have. So
wow.
I'm doing the whole thing. It's going to take a while. I'm doing basically everything Assassin's Creed except for iOS only games. If it was only on iOS or Android, I'm not playing it. That's the only exception.
I've never known Sawyer McDavid to play iOS games.
Started with Air's Chronicles for Nintendo. What'd you say, Ezra?
I was just saying I've never known you to play iOS games.
Oh no, that's not.
Oh, sorry,
Uh,
sorry, you cut out.
I started.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, can
Uh,
you hear me?
you're
Yeah, I got you.
now I can.
Oh, okay. I just basically said that iOS games are not something I'm strictly speaking fond of.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yes.
So you cut out again.
um, so I played that, and I'm currently about a little under a third of the way through Assassin's Creed One. But like I said, I have played Assassin's Creed One before. It's just been a
Mm-hmm.
while. Um,
Okay.
Starting with just a few things I wanted to mention about Altair's Chronicles. It's interesting that this game it takes place before, like approximately 1 year before the original game.
Okay.
Um, it stars Altair again, but it does not have a modern day story.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
it's kind
interesting.
of interesting in that it follows Altair, but the story is very minimal. It's him looking
Hmm.
for some kind of chalice. It's kind of implied to be the Holy Grail, but it's
Right.
never directly stated. Um, and it's supposedly this chalice that Altair can find can bring peace to the warring factions in the Middle East, and it's not that interesting of a story. Also, kind of ends on somewhat of a cliffhanger that is just completely dropped from the rest of the franchise and never addressed.
Hmm.
I
That's
mean, I
fair.
assume you guys don't really care about spoilers for this game.
Uh,
I don't.
I'm I'm good. Meaning I don't.
You,
I'm good to get spoiled on that portion.
okay, yeah. Basically, there's a character called Adha, which is, or Ada. I don't know how you pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's implied. So they find out later on. Altair discovers that this woman is actually the chalice. But the chalice is a person, not an actual like
Oh, okay.
cup. Um, and then it's subtly implied that this woman was a descendant of Jesus. It's just kind of dropped out of nowhere.
Okay.
That's weird.
I mean
I was
Super
like,
weird.
the lore of Assassin's Creed is just interesting in its own right. So it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds kind of wild.
But it was just strange that they mentioned that, but it's just mentioned so nonchalantly and barely even like talked about or confirmed.
right.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, and like apparently in the some like optional dialogue, I think it's either in the first game or in Revelations. It's probably Revelations, where
probably.
it straight up just said, "Oh, she was killed by pirates," and just happens off like it's because apparently, and you see in at the end of Altair's Chronicles,
Mm-hmm.
Altair fails and she gets taken away by. You can't even tell if they're Templars or if they're pirates. It's not really clear. And then Altair just says, "I'll shoot Ada." Game ends, and then she's not mentioned at all in the
Oh
first
no,
game.
that's
And
true.
then in Revelations, in like additional dialogue, she's just killed off screen.
Well, isn't
So they just literally said, "Oh yeah, this mysterious woman who can bring peace to all factions is technically a descendant of Jesus," and then she's killed off screen. It's just really weird.
Dennah Chronicles come out after the original though?
Yeah, it came out the approximately a year after. It came out in '08.
Yeah, I mean they probably didn't when they were probably developing the original game. They probably didn't even have that really in mind. But
So they've
Revelations
also
should.
probably were assuming that Altair was going to be in the sequel and it wasn't going to be Ezio.
That is very true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the game itself was really bland. Like I mean, it has the typical free running and combat and all that. It
Mm-hmm.
just kind of felt like a boring platformer. I should also say, even though I'm not a fan of iOS games, this game was also released on early model iPhones and looks much better on a 2007 iPhone than it does on the Nintendo DS. This
Wow.
game this
Okay.
game looks ugly. Like, and if you can see photos comparing it online, the photos of the version on iPhone looks basically like an early PS2 game, whereas this game kind of almost looks 16-bit. Like it's that bad.
Oh no.
But yeah,
That's not good.
It's a game that I've already pretty much forgotten about, and so has the series, because nothing that happened in this game really has any bearing or
Right.
weight on the rest of the franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the only thing it really gives you is more time with Altair and some more lore about how the assassins operated in the Crusades in that era. It's just the plot itself about the Chalice doesn't matter when she's just killed off screen in additional dialogue.
Right.
But I guess it is kind of cool to see Altair fail, because you don't really. I mean, that's granted. That's kind of how the first game starts. But oh well.
Right. Yeah. In the first game, you see him fail, but yeah, for the most part, he's kind of the franchise tried to, because the franchise was evolving. They wanted to make, whenever they would reference Altair, he would be much more stronger or anything than the original game implied him to be, I think.
Yeah, he kind of had this like legendary status, especially to Ezio, whereas in the early game he was just kind of this assassin that everybody hated.
Exactly. He was a rogue. He was a rogue the whole time.
Yeah. Well, that's really all I had to say about Altair's Chronicles. It was really just a boring side story that doesn't really matter and looks kind of ugly, but it's also about 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Yeah, and it's for fans who are massive fans of the series and want to play everything and experience the whole story. Right. It's not going to be something that you hate doing. Like, I didn't hate playing it, but I wouldn't say it's something that's absolutely vital either.
Okay.
That makes sense.
But
that's good to know.
The first main game in the series, I'm only going to give it a little bit right now because I haven't beaten it yet, and I want to save the whole thoughts for later. But I will say, man, this is probably the most 2007 game that I've played in a long time.
Like, true.
This game it is so like late 2000s. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's got the whole grays and browns like every other game did at that era. It's got so much of its angsty protagonist, as well as the fact that it's just the game itself feels like a prototype.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of feels like this is like the idea of what the series was, and they're like, oh, cool, a game about assassins, and we'll set it in the Third Crusade because that was like, when they based the Assassins originally on.
Right.
But the concept, I think, really came into its own with 2, at least from what I remember. This game was like, oh, well, you're going to have specific targets, stalk these targets, and all that. Whereas the later games were like, no, you're just going to be this cool guy and you're going to hunt on this conspiracy. You don't necessarily always have to have your stereotypical. I guess the thing they realized is just because that the Assassin's Creed is about assassins does not mean they have to basically be hitman. Like hitmen, they're not taking contracts and stalking one target. They're this whole brotherhood, and I liked how they developed that. Where this first game was really just the prototype for the concept. Definitely. It's a proof of concept. Is really what it is.
Yeah. Whenever I recommend the series, I always talk about the first one. It's like, get through the first one so you get a little bit of foundation of what this franchise is. But really, 2 is where you should base your judgment on the series off of. This is just like, you can get through this game within 10 hours. It's such a easy game to beat, because like, once you figure out like the 3 things that you have to do in between each mission, it goes like, by.
It is incredibly repetitive.
Yes,
incredibly repetitive. Like, if you really Ezra, you haven't played it, have you?
I have not played it.
All right.
But
So
you can
the
spoil it
core
as much as you want to.
okay. So the core gameplay loop really is just Al Mualim, I guess the head of the order, at least in this location, will basically task Altair. At the beginning of the game, he fails. He's kind of an Altair, at least the main character, is kind of arrogant, and he just kind of wants to do things his own way. He's not really following the creed, and so he gets demoted, and so he's tasked with 9 enemies or targets that he must kill in order to regain his rank, and he gets like another rank every time he takes out one of the 9. But basically, the entire gameplay loop is you'll go to one of the cities that are in the game, which that is one thing, side note, that kind of differentiates this game from the later games in the series, is the fact that there are multiple cities and not just one city. That was kind of cool.
Well, actually, no, but, two has multiple cities with it.
Yeah, but no, I mean, like, some of them do, but a vast majority of them only have the one.
Right.
At least from what I have played, following 1 and 2.
Well, Origins has multiple cities in it.
Okay. I haven't played Origins yet, so I don't know. And I guess, the third one has Philadelphia, and I think it's got New York as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, well, regardless, you go to one of these cities, and you have to do, there are 6 investigations that you can do, at least in the early ones. You only have to do 2 of them, which really comes down to either sitting on a bench and listening to, and like eavesdropping on people, or it's waiting for people to stop talking, pickpocket them, and then go. You go to this location, say, I'm ready to take out my target. You go to the target, take out the target, and then you go back to Al Mualim, say, I did it, and you just repeat that same thing over and over.
It's a very repetitive cycle.
All these different investigations are meant to give you different possible ways. At least it seemed like it was different ways of being able to take out your target and learn about them. But
you cut out.
Because it all is stab them, watch the cutscene, and then run away. It's really how it devolves down to that in every single one of the targets.
It's so true. It's all watch the cutscene and run away.
They faithfully recreated like a lot of those cities and that time period really well.
Yeah.
I liked I still like the concept. I liked the world building. I even liked seeing Altair as a character, because I kind of liked having, I guess looking back on Assassin's Creed now, ever since Ezio, every assassin pretty much since then has been trying to recapture the magic of Ezio.
That is true.
And it hasn't really been able to match that. Whereas I kind of liked looking back and playing as Altair, because he's not this good, charismatic, charming dude. He's just this kind of arrogant, rule-following, I guess he's not rule-following in this game, but he later becomes rule-following.
That's true.
Dude. And it's not, I mean, it was kind of nice, but I guess the pros of this game, you get to see where the story starts. It is very different, for better or for worse, than the later games in the series. But it is highly repetitive, and this game also is pretty much I would say it's the beginning of the Ubisoft open world syndrome, in terms of I guess really just open world game syndrome in general, with the control towers or everything that you have to go up and with your standard open world. Go to all the different towers and liberate the towers, and then you'll unlock a section of the map, and then save these citizens, and like your typical Ubisoft side quest. I mean, I'm probably not even going to bother with the towers for the rest of this game. So I can get through the first one, I'm probably just going to go from enemy to take out the targets, get the cutscenes, and then move on. Because there really isn't any even side missions. It's really just stop these citizens from getting hurt from the guards, and then they'll give you another way of blending in, which even then doesn't matter because the combat is so easy.
Very true. Very true. once you develop that idea of just countering everything, it's easy. I think.
Yeah.
And what'd you say?
I think there was countering in that game, wasn't there? Or was that a team?
Oh yeah, there is countering.
Oh, okay, cool.
You have to unlock it though after I think the third.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay.
Well, that's for the first game. Since I haven't beaten it yet, I will leave my story discussion until after I beat the rest of the game.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Sawyer, I think you cut out.
Oh, I only have I've got already I think 4 of the targets, 3 or 4. So I'm about a good chunk of the way through. And if I skip the open world stuff and just go for the story, which is what I do for most open world games anyway, I story. So I should definitely have a story review for Assassin's Creed 1 next week.
Okay. Interesting.
Awesome.
I will save my story comments for later then.
All right. We got some teasing going on for next episode. I like it. So Sawyer, is that everything you wanted to talk about with Assassin's Creed? Did you want to talk about something else, or are you good for now?
I think the one thing I will mention in this marathon is I'm hoping that it doesn't I don't get burnt out, because there is a lot of games and a lot of DLC. But I do think
a lot of video games.
I do, and they're all. I mean, this is kind of common criticism over the last couple of years in terms of all the Assassin's Creed games being kind of the same. But I do think that the fact that there are different assassins and different time periods will kind of keep it a little bit refreshing for me, rather than just every game taking place in Renaissance Italy. I'm looking forward.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, when they announced Odyssey, I was like, we're back in Italy. But you know, I haven't played Odyssey, but I hear it's good. I hear it's really good.
I mean, Odyssey, I think technically it's in Greece and not.
Oh yeah. What am I thinking of? I was thinking, well, we're back in the Mediterranean. That's what it was. Not that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I believe Origins. That I could be wrong, but doesn't Origins have some segments in Rome?
I mean, I haven't gotten that far. I got about halfway through in Origins, and kind of just quit. But.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the burnout for me. Was halfway through.
Yeah, well, I will. I hope I can make my way through.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I look forward to it.
Wish Sawyer a good journey on his odyssey through the Assassin.
Pun intended.
Pun absolutely intended. So let's move on once again. All of us, I think, have absorbed some sort of Transformers media in our time. And last episode, Sawyer and Caleb had quite a meaty discussion on the first 3 Transformers movies. Now I get to join the battle and say I'm gonna open this discussion, this continuation, by saying, what the heck in the world was going on in Transformers 4? I'm still not quite sure what happened in that movie.
That movie is almost. I mean, I can let me tell you about the first time I saw that movie, because I saw that movie in theaters as well. In 2014, I saw it. It was just me and my dad. My mom and brother saw a different movie at the same time. Theirs started about an hour after ours started.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, it started about an hour before ours started, and then they still got out before we did.
I love that the Transformers movies are just so long. Why are they
there
so
was that. I came out of that movie. I saw it in Cinemark XD. I came out of that movie with a raging headache. I was like,
oh no.
I took a nap after getting home from that movie. I was like, Transformers 4 might actually kill me.
Oh no.
It was.
Oh, Transformers. I love to hate you.
I mean,
and rewatched it recently, and I forgot how bad that fourth movie really is. It's bad.
It's not great, man.
I will.
To be fair, I haven't seen it in a while, but it's not great.
Our staying for 4 hours in a theater are not as bad when you're just watching them on DVD in your house, but
that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a hot take, and I'm ready. But I liked Age of Extinction.
So why did you like it? Is my question. There are valid reasons why you might enjoy that, but we have to vet some of these.
Okay, you actually liked Age of Extinction.
Yes.
Okay, well, do you like it more than the original trilogy, or do you just like it as its own thing?
Uh-oh.
So this might be a real hot take.
The pause here might be a little ominous, I have to say.
All right. So, I think I'll answer that question at the end. But
okay.
I think the reason why I love this, I like this movie, is because I really love the villain. I think the villain.
Who's the villain? I don't know who the villain is.
Lockdown, I think.
Lockdown?
Oh, so you mean the Decepticon villain, not the human villain?
No. The Decepticon villain.
Okay.
I don't watch Transformers for the human plot. Let me tell you that.
No.
No. So I thought going out, like, I really enjoyed. So basically, the reason why I like this film is 4 felt like I liked the tone of 4 more so than the other 3, of a post-apocalyptic world, and it felt like a different turn for the franchise that I was on board for. And I think the idea, like, I like the idea of the, even though they carry this trope, and we'll get to Last Night in a second, but the trope of, there's very little Autobots left, and I like that struggle for survival. I felt like I really connected with that. The and I felt like moving past Megatron and towards a different type of villain was actually very refreshing to me as well. Specifically, one sequence that I love with Lockdown is the highway sequence. I think he's incredibly. I think he's very menacing, and I think he. See, I'm nervous because y'all are quiet, and I'm like. But I think he proves to be a formidable opponent against Optimus, and I think as a one-on-one thing, I really love this movie for that. I like the visually, I like it. The biggest problems I have with this movie is the pacing and the human plot. I could do without that.
Yeah.
And I would tell you this movie is a lot better than people give it credit for because of the humans.
I will give you that. I do think, and it's kind of a thing for the whole franchise. I think a lot of people just love to hate the series.
Yeah.
And while I do not think it's a good movie, I do think people giving it the rap of, oh, this is the worst movie ever made, are really just trying to hate on it, because it is a competently made movie.
Right.
Like it's well made. It's just poorly written. That's really the only problem.
Yeah, like I guess that was probably my biggest issue coming out of the movie too, is like there's so much focus put on the human plot, and the human plot is just so bad.
Yeah.
That it's just like as much as I want to like the stuff that they do with the Autobots, I'm not given any reason to when they're just focusing on Mark Wahlberg's daughter issues.
Yeah,
that's
that was my problem. Like,
yeah.
I like the Autobot characters, and like I actually was attached. Like I love Optimus, I love Bumblebee,
right.
I love all these characters. My problem is like we're spending so much time, and I mentioned the infamous scene about the Romeo and Juliet law
right.
thing. Like that we spend so much time on these problems when I don't think there was a single person who went into last night and said, "Oh boy, I can't wait to see what happened to Cade Yeager." Like, no, you're not seeing these movies for the humans.
I will say
it's frustrating because I just keep imagining what these movies would be like if they kept the same crew, heck, even still Michael Bay directing. Like they kept everything the same. They just had a different script and they shaved 45 minutes off the runtime. You'd have a really good film.
I think that well, with me, like I didn't mind the idea of like basing it in like say Texas, which is somewhere like really rural and stuff, and having a Mark Wahlberg type character, but all the other people that surround Mark Wahlberg's character in this movie are absolutely cliched and atrocious. I do not like these characters.
So bad.
Like Mark.
Go ahead.
One that I like it's maybe because Mark Wahlberg. That's really it.
Right. But I like the idea of like a mechanic having to like fix up Optimus Prime in this type of world, like it. So I did draw attachments to Cade, but like any form of attachment was thrown out the window in the last night. But the movie, it felt great because it felt different, but like I think the Dinobots are a waste in this movie. I do admit its problems. Like there are some problems in this movie that I do agree with. There's even shots where the green screen's still left on. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't catch it.
Funny.
It's in the the killing of Ratchet.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I mean, like that is legitimately. I'm glad you brought that up. That scene with Ratchet is the only scene that I felt really anything in this entire film, and that's really because it's the only connection to the first three. I think the fact that.
Go ahead.
It's like other than Optimus and Bumblebee, the only other Autobots that I cared about.
Right. Yeah. That is the other thing. Other than Bumblebee, like the new Autobots, the three new Autobots, I wasn't really a big fan of. And I think that's probably my problem. That's probably another problem with this movie that I think is good thing to address. But so getting back to your guys' question on why I whether or not I like this more than any, like if I like this more than any other in the first three, I think this is a good Optimus Prime story, and I think that's what I really attach to a lot in the Transformers franchise.
I see that.
And one of my big problems with is, and we'll get to the last night, but one of my big problems with the franchise as a whole is when they sideline certain Autobots, and it just doesn't have to be Optimus Prime. It could be who else gets sidelined in the first three?
Well, really, Optimus and Bumblebee gets sidelined. Ironhide gets sidelined pretty bad in the in the second one.
Yeah, Ironhide and I would say any of the original Autobots in the second one are pretty much sidelined for all the new characters, and
except for Bumblebee.
Yeah, except for Bumblebee. And I think that's why I really drew towards Age of Extinction, because that was the other thing. It wasn't about as much Bumblebee anymore. It wasn't necessarily the Bumblebee show. It was it was back to Optimus Prime being the main focus, which the main focus of the Autobots, because in the first three it's definitely Bumblebee and his connection with Sam.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Which, that's the other thing, is like this
you cut out.
It expects us to about the first three movies, where like they spent so much time in those first three getting us to care, trying to get us to care about these characters and this plot. And in this movie, they disregard it and don't give us any answers or even mention it.
Exactly, yeah.
They don't ever mention, like, why is Bumblebee not with Sam anymore? Like, you can infer reasons why, but they just flat out never state it. And that's what made it frustrating. It's like, if this is a reboot, just say it's a reboot. Like, I don't like the fact that they just straight up don't give an answer, because I really like the first three, and for me, the series pretty much ends with the third one.
That's true.
I like the third one at least. I mean, it still kind of ends on a cliffhanger with, oh, well, the Battle of Chicago is over. And I will say, I do like the basic premise for this movie of, oh, well, after the Battle of Chicago, humans hate and fear the Autobots, so they're getting rid of them. Like, I like that premise, and I like how there's, like, Energon detectors everywhere and all that. But I don't like how they just kind of did away with everything we knew just to kind of give a blank slate. I would have liked a little bit more of a transition.
I would agree. And I know this will start to blend into the last night here, but part of the reason why I was so excited for the last night, and part of the reason why I hate this movie even more, last night during the production process, there was a lot of promises being made of that gap, of that bridge. That was supposed to be the bridge title. And we'll get to the last night in a second, but that's one of my big problems with how that goes down. But I would.
For me, the Transformers. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I would agree with you in the fact that the absence of not giving any context to those characters was very jarring, and it didn't feel like the same series. And it's funny because it also contradicts any of Sam's arc again, to where in the second one I don't want to do this anymore, to the third one, I want to do this, and then fourth one, gone.
Not even there.
Ghosted. No context. Although, isn't it in the last night, isn't it confirmed that he's dead or something?
It's heavily implied. It's not confirmed, but it's heavily implied.
That's another thing. It's like just confirm it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
because there's no way they're gonna get Shia LaBeouf back.
right.
But I think my whole thing with these two movies specifically, and I guess really the franchise as a whole, it's never anger. It's just frustration and disappointment.
Yeah.
Because like I know I shouldn't ever get my hopes up on these movies because I know there's no way they're gonna like they haven't really been good in a while. But I think like I do like the first movie a lot. I like its soundtrack. I like the effects. I like the characters. And I even think both Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox were good in that first movie. Like I think the first one is a really fun time and it has heart. It also knows its focus. While there is this in like galactic scale, it's also just focused on a boy in his car. That's really the core crux of that story. The second one kind of keeps that going, but also bridges like the world out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the second one, really, its problem was the fact that it was in production during the writer's strike. I think that was the big problem.
There was also there was just behind the scenes production problems with the second one that I think really destroyed it. Was that and the fact that Shia also got injured on set when they were filming the third act, so a lot of the third act got changed around. So on top of the writer's strike, you had that. So, you know what I mean? And then you also had
like
Megan
the third
Fox.
one when they got rid of Megan Fox. Yeah,
right.
that was what really hurt that. And this one, they just don't address it. And I hate the fact that these stories are so inconsistent because I like these characters and I want to like the movies so bad. It's just the fact that they're so inconsistent and just disregard plot threads, especially in 4 and 5, that I just wish they would have kept with that tone and storytelling that the first movie and even parts of the second movie had. Like just everything after Revenge of the Fallen, it's almost like they just didn't care anymore. And they're like, oh well, we'll just have some like just do some. There's no connective tissue between movies. Really, it's just the first two. Like the Revenge of the Fallen connects to the first one,
right?
But the third one barely connects. It's really just with a couple of the characters.
Yeah.
And then 4 and 5 don't connect at all. It's well, if we're looking at the fourth one, I think the one thing there's a couple things I wanted to just the stray thoughts I wanted to address with Age of Extinction. First thing was that Romeo and Juliet scene is so bad and so out of place. It is just there's no reason for it to be there, and especially in a kids movie.
Even in the writing, like I don't understand. Like if you are trying to make so much of a point of even like this weird of a justification, like wouldn't it have just been easier to just write that she's older?
Yeah, or like make him just like even though he's older, just say, oh yeah, he's 18 or something like that. You don't have to have this whole thing.
It felt so weird, and it takes me out of the movie every time.
Well, and her being 18 doesn't really matter. The only thing is the fact that she can't afford to go to college. That's literally the only line.
Right. And
to her being 18.
Yeah.
17. Did you make her 18? It's also your
exactly.
I don't get why that had to be necessary, but
it's so weird. Like I feel like that's the thing that gets me about it the most is like there's some cool action set pieces and Optimus Prime is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But why are we talking about like consent laws in a transport?
Exactly.
Like that doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, I think that's some of the few positives I did have with this movie is I do think the Autobots. I do like the Autobots. I like the actors. Like the cast is a good cast. I don't think the daughter is a really good actor, but I think the rest of the cast is pretty good. I mean, Stanley Tucci, Kelsey Grammer, Mark Wahlberg.
Right, yeah.
Like you've got a really good cast. And of course the Autobots are always great, and there is some really great action sequences. I do like, even though they're not utilized very well, I do like the Dinobots. You mentioned that scene on the street with Optimus and Lockdown.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was really cool.
You know, fun fact, I know where that was filmed. I think.
It was what?
I think I know where that was filmed.
Oh, cool.
So a little backstory on that, real quick, sidetrack. But
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
a lot of these films film up in Detroit,
Yeah.
Okay.
but there's a certain highway that I remember them reserving off of, because and I saw that, and I was like, I saw where they were filming, and I was just like, it was very close to home. So like, even in that scene, it feels close to home, if that makes sense. So it could be a whole other road that they filmed off of, but to me that it seems visually very similar to where I thought they filmed that at. So I thought it was really cool. So there's
That's cool.
There's some backside on that. There's some backstory on that too. But
that's cool. Yeah, I think like I liked that scene. I think it's just the movie is too long, and I think a good portion of that is the fact at the end of the movie it is so clear that they are pandering to China at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. The fact that they're like, we have to go for absolutely no reason, need to go all the way to Hong Kong for the end of this battle.
Yes.
With there, and the two scenes that stick out specifically to me in terms of pandering to the Chinese audience. First one was that scene. There's a random shot of Stanley Tucci sitting there drinking milk, and the labels turn right at the camera, just some kind of Chinese. That and the scene when of course, the sky beam, because it's 2014, so there had to be a sky beam.
There's a sky beam in that one? Oh, yeah. Well, I remember.
It was sky magnet beam.
It was
thing.
the magnet. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little different than the typical sky beam, but still a sky beam. And at the end of that, and they have the scene with some police, and they're like, we need to call the central government for help. And they had this whole scene about how competent and amazing the Chinese government is, because they're like, we're going to go defend Hong Kong and sending all these people in. Granted, you could make the same argument.
Actually, really funny.
You could make the same argument for the first three movies, technically, with the way they glamorize the American military, but it's jarring, more so for the fact that they take the entire third act for no reason to Hong Kong than it is for these specific lines.
I think it would be way better if it was based in Hong Kong, the whole movie, or just in
either that
just
or
China.
just kept it in Texas.
Or kept it in Texas, yeah.
Oh, but Michael Bay isn't brave enough to cast, and I some Hong Kong actors to
Well, I was going to say, even if it was
movie.
I was going to say, even if it was set in Hong Kong, there's no way it'd be a Chinese person playing the main character.
Yeah, that would be just a whole.
It'd still be Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, Michael Bay would have found unfortunately.
Well, or there would have been some ridiculous line about like there is with the age thing. There would have been some ridiculous line to explain it away.
And yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, how much is it on the actual writers, or is it just Michael Bay? You know what I mean?
Well, I do think people like to blame Michael Bay. I don't think it could all be blamed on him. I do think a large portion of it is the writers.
Okay.
But it could also come down to editing too. That could also be a good portion of it. But yeah, I think it's that. So it was mainly that last 45 minutes in China. The Romeo and Juliet law scene. I liked that highway fight. And like I said, I think the cast and the special effects are good. And there is a good movie in here if they just punched up the script a little bit and shaved 45 minutes off the runtime with that whole Hong Kong thing. Other than that, I do think there is a good movie in here. It's just, it needed, in my opinion, as a fan, it needed some connective tissue to the others and to also do the other things I had mentioned. But it's still a much better film than what came after.
All right, so give me. I haven't seen 5. All I know is the weird aspect ratio stuff, which is pretty bad. So give me your best rants on Transformers 5.
Caleb, you mind if I go first on this one?
Go ahead.
Okay, this movie is possibly. I don't even know how to describe what I witnessed in watching this. So this movie starts off, and so I should say spoilers, but it doesn't matter. The end of the fourth movie, it ends with Optimus Prime being like, "Oh, I'm gonna go find our creators," and blast off into space. I was like, "Okay, cool. That's an interesting way to end the movie. I'm looking forward to see what they do there." The movie opens up with Optimus just frozen, floating in space. I'm like, so did he know that he was gonna just be floating in space for years, or was that a part of his plan? It doesn't make any sense. But why not? Sure, he's
and
floating.
Somehow he drifts to his destination too.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I guess he's heading back to Cybertron, but like, so he made a whole point in the third movie about how they didn't have a way of getting there, so they retrofitted the ship that the second wave arrived in, and it doesn't even matter like 2 movies later because Optimus can just blast off and not have a problem. Okay, well, whatever.
It's like, oh no, go. Are you done with the?
Oh, I'm still going.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Keep it going, guys.
The aspect ratio. That's the next thing. It doesn't. There are scenes legitimately. So for those of you who don't know, an aspect ratio is basically, in easier terms, it's the way the picture looks and fits your screen. So for example, if it's widescreen and there's black bars on the top and bottom, usually that's the standard Academy widescreen aspect ratio. If it's full screen, it's 16:9 and it fits your entire screen, so there's no black bars on the top or bottom or the left or right. That also could be IMAX full screen because IMAX fits the whole frame. There's also many different ones, but that's like those are the main ones. There's also 4:3, but that's a whole other thing. This movie will change aspect ratios in between shots in a conversation. Yeah. And it is infuriating. Like, for them to cut to Anthony Hopkins and it be in widescreen, and then cut back to Mark Wahlberg and it's in full screen, and they cut back and forth between lines. And it's disorienting. It gave me a headache, and it drags you out of the film because you're constantly just being it's jarring how it keeps going back and forth.
So what I just did as you were doing this description is I was dragging the image up and down to help emphasize on how distracting the aspect ratio is in this.
And like, I could understand if it was just like, oh well, we have a sequence we shot in IMAX of an action scene, and then when we cut back to a dialogue scene happening in another city and it's in a different aspect ratio, like that I understand. They do that in Mission Impossible movies sometimes too, when they shoot the stunts in IMAX and then the rest of the dialogue is in standard widescreen. Yeah, I get that. But different shots in one sequence constantly, just not even in an action sequence, just within one sequence of 2 characters talking to each other and it changing is so strange. That's the next thing. Optimus apparently goes up to. I'm going to try and recap the plot for our viewers as well as Ezra, just to see if it even makes any sense.
All right, give it to me.
Optimus gets back to Cybertron, and he finds on this supposedly desolate world, I don't even remember her name, some old, like, one of their creators,
Quintessa.
Okay. Yeah. And she takes over or like clouds Optimus's mind so that he was going to mine Earth's resources, I think, and transfer them to Cybertron so they can restore Cybertron. So she takes over Optimus's mind. He's like, yes, I'll do whatever you want. And I'm pretty sure after that scene, you don't see Optimus for another hour and a half.
Sidelined until the end.
Yeah, pretty much until the end.
Wait, what's this movie about?
Oh, we'll get there. So he's pretty much gone for this entire movie. Then we cut back to Earth, and it's Mark Wahlberg just chilling in the junkyard with the rest of the Autobots. And wait, I didn't mention. Apparently, they have another scene where they go back to medieval times. And, which this is another thing that didn't make any sense. Stanley Tucci's in this movie again, but he plays a different character from who he played in the fourth movie.
He plays Merlin.
Stanley Tucci plays Merlin, which is fantastic. If it wasn't for the fact that he plays a different.
Then they got the guy who played King Arthur in Once Upon a Time to play King Arthur in this movie.
Okay, and supposedly there's a scene in this movie where Merlin doesn't actually know magic. His magic comes from a special Cybertonian staff that one of the early Autobots. I guess it's not an Autobot because it predates the Autobots, but it also is retconned from the other movies, so that doesn't matter. But it gives him some kind of special staff, and it turns out the staff is one of it's Quintessa's staff apparently. That these knights stole because they used to be Quintessa's knights, and when they arrived to Earth during medieval times, but that also doesn't make sense within the context of the previous movies because it seemingly says that they came here during the final days of the war for Cybertron, and they got here that quick. But it also doesn't make sense because Optimus came here, but they didn't arrive until 2007, but they left at the same time, which doesn't make any sense. The whole time of when the war for Cybertron ended and when these people got here doesn't make any sense, especially since how did Sentinel Prime end up on the moon anyway? That doesn't, but that's it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't care, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't think I say it's gonna make any sense, but let's see, like this is the only Transformers movie that makes me actively mad. Like
yeah, me too.
Then we move on. They have a scene where one of these knights is somehow in a random crashed ship in the middle of Chicago, and Chicago is still in ruins now, apparently. And there's this little girl who is basically like lives in the ruins with one Autobot who has like maybe 5 minutes of screen time before he's murdered.
Yep.
And then Josh Duhamel pops up again. This time on the bad side. I don't even remember why. They have some contrived explanation about how he's like, we got orders from the government to do this. There's like a special group who's hunting down.
Yeah.
Or is that the fourth movie?
No, they were trying to carry on that fourth movie like twist, except it was supposed to be brand new, and it's like you just did this the last movie.
Yeah, and so when Mark Wahlberg is there, he's apparently like a vigilante, like a fugitive because he's helping save Autobots, even though that's illegal now. And so this one knight, Cybertonian, gives him a medal thing, which is apparently was passed around for King Arthur and the knights back then. And so now he's got a sword that can pop out of his arm. Anyway. That doesn't reveal until the end of the movie, but that's what it is. And Quintessa wants. I'm trying to make sense of it because there's so many jumbled scenes in this movie that don't make any sense. Girl who lives in Chicago trash heap comes back to undisclosed a secondary trash heap that Mark Wahlberg lives in. Then they get raided by Decepticons, and I have to say, the scene where Megatron cuts a deal with the U.S. government to release some of the other Decepticons for his team, because there's a scene in this movie where Josh Duhamel makes a deal with Megatron so that he can lead them to the staff because Earth's geography is changing, and supposedly this staff is the only way they're going to be able to stop that. But Mark Wahlberg knows Optimus and the others, so why doesn't he go to them to ask them how to stop it before going to Megatron to try and cut a deal? It doesn't make any sense. Again, I'm going to say that same sentence.
And even the same general that gives the general that gives the orders was also on the side of the Autobots in the original films.
So the general and the colonel or whatever his name is, there's two returning military people who are from the first three movies who we know.
Yeah.
But somehow they've changed sides to working, they're not working with the Decepticons, but they're not helping the Autobots either.
Right.
Do the writers of the Transformers movies understand the definition of the word continuity?
Not really.
No.
And then...
Yeah, go ahead.
We then later on, the scene that I'm mentioning, I only mention this scene because it's basically Suicide Squad.
Oh no, not
there,
that scene. I totally forgot about that scene. That scene. Oh no. Oh, I erased that from my mind. No.
okay.
Oh, I hate that scene.
Okay, you gotta prepare yourself for this. There's a scene where you
Oh,
is Ezra muted? I can't tell. I think Ezra might be muted. Ezra, can you hear us?
oh no.
No, I don't know.
Oh no.
It broke him. It broke him. I'm just gonna keep going. I don't want to talk about this movie for longer than I have to. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it looks like
this
he's muted.
this scene for the audience, in case you don't know, there's a scene in Suicide Squad, where they introduce the characters and they've got I gotta have Ezra hear this. I'm gonna text in the chat and see if he can see if he even knows we're here.
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Okay, here.
I muted
Cool.
myself.
Cool.
I had to go do something real quick. So
Oh, you're
go
fine.
ahead.
You just missed the
I'm
Price's
ready.
reaction, though.
I had to make sure you were here just so you could hear about this scene. This
Yes,
scene
no,
is
I can hear
possibly this is the scene where I actively had to take a break. I had to get up and get some food because it took a moment.
It's so bad. I actually erased this from my brain. Oh no.
This scene is Suicide Squad, the scene where like they're introducing all the different members of the crew and they play like a different song and you haven't seen Suicide Squad.
I haven't seen Suicide Squad, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. The scene is on YouTube, so I'll have to send you a link at some point. But this scene basically, it's Megatron trying to cut a deal with the U.S. government to release some Decepticons so that Megatron has a team so that he can acquire the staff so that they can prevent Earth from dying. And Megatron at this point doesn't even care about world domination anymore. He just wants to get off that stupid planet, is what he says, something like that.
Yeah.
And the scene where they're like cutting to this deal and cutting back to all the different Decepticons that he wants to release is basically every Decepticon has like a different song and they're all getting it's basically Suicide Squad and it is so bad.
Yeah.
It is so bad.
It is so bad.
That's really all I can say. It's so bad.
When I saw that in the theaters,
It's just ridiculous.
That was the moment. That was the defining moment for me where I was like, I hate this movie.
Just can't do it anymore.
It's later on revealed that Earth is actually Unicron, which I apparently is a thing, and Unicron, there's so many jumbled things. Earth being Unicron, as well as the fact that Quintessa wants to merge Earth with Cybertron, but does she know that Earth is Unicron? And if so, how does that work with merging it with Cybertron? They never explain it. They just brush that over.
They assume you know what Unicron is, unfortunately. Well,
Unicron is like a big deal.
And they wanted to save him for the 6th movie. They were trying to pull Thanos, but I'll get to that. I'll let you keep ranting because I have a whole lore rant going on, ready to go.
This movie, then they also introduced the Order of the Witwickens, which I guess was trying to tie in a little bit to the first movie, because Sam Witwicky was the main character that Shia LaBeouf played. Apparently, the Witwickens are this secret order who have been tasked with allying themselves and protecting the Autobots over the last several thousand years, pretty much ever since Merlin. They all descend from Merlin. And this staff was one of the staffs that the Knight brought, and they have a montage of all these different. Anthony Hopkins is the one, by the way, who is the keeper of the Witwickens, which
awesome.
I will say the one scene that I like this movie is one of the only aspects was seeing Anthony Hopkins talk to obviously a green screen and not have any idea what he's doing. A scene of Anthony Hopkins. Yeah. There's a scene of Anthony Hopkins in a Lamborghini Transformer as it races around London while he's talking to some psychopathic, like
Butler,
weird,
wasn't it?
like butler robot that's sitting next to him, and it's just Anthony Hopkins trash talking as they speed around, and he's talking to this like mocapped character in the side, and just seeing Anthony Hopkins just shove his middle finger out the window as they're driving down the street is it's so insane, and it's like one of the only scenes, not because it's good, but because it's one of the strangest things that I have ever seen in a film. So apparently they imply by using Sam Witwicky's eBay profile picture from the first movie that he was one of this order. They also have a flashback to World War II where apparently Bumblebee was in World War II, which flies directly in the face of the continuity of the first movie.
Oh yeah, and it was immediately, yeah. Never mind.
And the new Bumblebee movie, but
yeah, the new. That's why I said never mind. The new Bumblebee movie is its own thing.
Yeah,
sort of.
And so, yeah, and that's also never brought up again, other than a flashback showing him assault some Nazi building. Which, by the way, that scene, the flashback in World War II, apparently angered the British government and the British people, because that building that they draped the Nazi flags from and have them assault was actually the place where Winston Churchill was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So the fact that they turned Winston Churchill's birthplace into a Nazi compound that Bumblebee assaults, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
Of course, later on in this movie, there's more ridiculous faux romantic dialogue between the actress, who I already forget her name, and it's her mom and some friends. There's just a bunch of oh, you need to get a boyfriend and all these different things. And there's a scene. Due to the fact that we try to keep this somewhat a PG-13 show, somewhat, I'm not going to mention some of the jokes that we get, but when she and Mark Wahlberg have to come back to their house so they can find some clue as to where the staff is or whatever, there's some typical Michael Bay jokes that just make you cringe.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just stream of consciousness at this point. I don't even know. Apparently,
we just officially broke Slayer.
It really did. There are very few movies on this podcast that break me as much as this one. The last time was probably the 2018 Halloween movie, but there's apparently Mark Wahlberg is he is the last knight who is protecting what's her face, because she is a descendant of Merlin. She's the last descendant of Merlin, which apparently means that she's also somehow related to Sam Witwicky.
Yeah.
Then we rush towards the end. Cybertron is sucking up Earth, or I guess technically Unicron. And then somehow Optimus comes back for the 15 minutes that he's in this movie. Fights Bumblebee once. Bumblebee talks, which doesn't make any sense, but he talks despite getting a fixed, not having a fixed fixed vocal box.
That's right.
And then somehow Bumblebee talking snaps Optimus out of his mind control, which leads to another continuity error when Optimus says, "B, I haven't heard you speak since the fall of Cybertron," which isn't true because he heard Bumblebee speak at the end of the first Transformers, which doesn't make any sense, but sure. Then they have a fight. It ends abruptly. Anthony Hopkins dies, and then the post-credit scene. Oh, we're gonna raise Unicron from the ground or whatever, and we never got a sequel. I hate this movie with a burning passion. None of it makes aside from the only thing I like about this is that the special effects are pretty good. There's maybe 2 cool action scenes. I like Mark Wahlberg, and getting to see Anthony Hopkins interact with this terrible dialogue is ridiculously fun.
Okay. Okay, I like the take. Caleb, hit me with your rants.
All right, let me tell you how bad. Oh my gosh.
Caleb, you go ahead here. Continue on for me.
To describe this movie, it is hot garbage. Hot garbage.
All right. Yes.
Okay, so where do I use it? Okay, so like I said earlier, that this movie was supposed to be the bridge title. What was promised was the bridge title between the old trilogy and setting up this new trilogy. Not setting up, connecting this trilogy and defining.
Air quotes on the trilogy.
What was that?
Air quotes on the word trilogy.
yeah, because it never happened. But
Yeah.
so when this movie came out, this is around the time when writers started to see the success of the MCU, and is like, you know what, we should do that. So of course, as Transformers wasn't ambitious enough, they're like, we need a Thanos. And I have always, mind you, said Unicron is the way to go for these movies. Like, he needs to be that villain. Like, I've been like wondering when he would show up since the second movie. Like, I thought he would show up in the second movie, and then in the third movie, and then in the fourth movie. And then once he was finally promised, to give context, I'm a big G1 fan. I love
G1, for those who don't know, is the original series.
Yes.
Okay.
So I know all about the lore behind Generation 1 and all that stuff, and I mean, I've seen every episode of it, including the best Transformers movie.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. You should watch it, because that's the defining Transformers movie for me. And then I also watched all of. This is a newer series. It's not the newest series of Transformers. It's the Transformers Prime series. I don't know if you ever.
I don't think it's the newest one anymore.
It's not the newest, but it's one of the newer ones. It came out when the original trilogy for these movies came out, and it had Unicron in it too, and it did a really nice job with Unicron in making a twist that Unicron was actually Earth, and that was a cool twist. And these writers were like, you know what? This is how we introduce Unicron. Let's make him Earth. And I'm like, okay, cool. Cool.
Let's make him Earth.
I got a little excited in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. In the beginning, I was a little excited because I'm like, oh,
you were going with it, right?
We're really going into the whole Unicron aspect, and then also Quintessa, who, to give you some G1 Generation 1 lore, there was to really quickly speed up the lore behind the Quintessons, but or was it called Quintessicons? No, it was Quintessons, I'm pretty sure. The Quintessons were the original rulers of Cybertron, and the Decepticons were their military, the military race, and then the Autobots were the infrastructure people, until both the Autobots and the Decepticons rose up against them, and that's essentially what they casted them out of Cybertron, and then eventually their leadership clashes, and thus begins the war, and the famous war for Cybertron as we know it, between the Autobots and the Decepticons. But the Quintessons have their revenge in the original Transformers movie. That's when they start. Coming into play. So I thought, with them using I thought it was a bit jarring that it was just one Transformer that was kind of controlling Cybertron. I mean, now I'm back onto last night, and it's just Quintessa, singular, and she's just they keep right with her being the creator and all that stuff. Oh, well, not being the creator, being that specific enemy, but so she's bringing Cybertron to Earth so she can destroy Unicron. This kind of sounds like already, just thinking about it, that maybe she's on the right side, which becomes problematic for the movie that you're trying to tell now. Because she's supposed to be the main villain of this movie. And if you know anything about the lore, you're like, I don't even know who I need to root for in this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, in the ending of the movie, like the post-credit scene doesn't help either because it still makes her out to look like a bad guy.
Exactly. It's this movie, and then the whole idea of the bridge title of like bridging together the original trilogy of like, you know, we're bringing Josh Duhamel back. We're bringing. We're going to address what happened with the Witwickies, you know.
And they brought Glenn Morshower back too, the general from the first movie.
Yeah, the general, and they were going to continue with that twist of 4, of, you know, Optimus Prime going off into space and meeting his creators or whatever. And they basically said, yeah, no, we're telling a King Arthur story inside all of this. And then we're going to make it all contradict each other in one movie. And it is great. So bad on so many levels. They destroyed any hope I had for a Unicron, and I'm sad. It breaks me.
That does sound sad.
It breaks me in every way.
The one thing I should say for people at home is, don't let the bad publicity and bad information that even we are saying about the Transformers movies affect your view of the Transformers franchise as a whole.
Yes.
Because I still think Gen 1 and Prime and like several of the cartoons are actually really good and have really interesting stories and characters. It's just the movies fail to really adapt and know what people loved about those cartoons.
Except for Bumblebee.
Except for Bumblebee.
Bumblebee is really a really great movie that I'm really pushing hard for Sawyer to watch, even after.
Oh, I'm going to watch it at some point. I needed to take a breather for a couple of weeks after this movie.
I understand. But yeah,
and supposedly it's a reboot, right?
It's a movie that is probably better appreciated as a reboot.
Okay.
They kind of did a thing where like, yeah, we're rebooting it, but if this tanks, or like if we don't want to reboot the franchise, we'll keep it canon, kind of thing. It's canon but not canon.
It's canon, but it doesn't really affect anything.
Yes, especially towards certain moments.
Okay.
If that, you'll be like, wait, this doesn't fit into the timeline. And yeah, I mean, my argument with that is The Last Night destroyed any form of a timeline as it was. So it's like, you know, go for it. You know what I mean? Reboot it. I'm totally on board.
At some point, it's all so broken that continuity can just go out the window and you can do whatever you want.
Right. And having someone that has a clear vision was and having clear writers was what really made Bumblebee really special. So
I think it was also bringing it back down to scale again.
Yes.
Because the first, the first Transformers movie, it was just a boy in his car. Only Transformers is just, Bumblebee now is just a girl in her car. It's they bring it down to scale and keep it emotionally rooted rather than being this huge galactic scale story, which is cool, and I think Transformers could do in the hands of better writers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Better writers are needed for everything. Get better writers. If your series is lacking, try better writers.
Well, here's the thing about The Last Night. If memory serves right, there are hold on. So there are 4 writers of The Last Night. And one of them wrote Batman and Robin.
That's a good sign. That says good things. Thumbs up.
And Insurgent, the sequel to the Divergent series. Sorry, I'm just like going down the list here of like history.
You're
Going down the list
reading,
of just like bad movies that was written.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about Akiva Goldsman, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's been behind a lot of stuff. He's written some good stuff.
He's
too,
written
though.
some, but like, yeah.
I'm more crediting. I'm kind of surprised by Matt Holloway and Art Markham, 2 of the other writers on this film, who they often team together because I'm looking at their other writing credits, and they're just the same ones. Who co-wrote together such movies as the original Iron Man, Punisher Warzone, and Men in Black International.
But what about none of them wrote 4, did they?
That's what I see.
Yeah.
Maybe they just didn't care.
Honestly,
that's
the summary of the movie. They didn't care anymore.
You know.
I think it's pretty obvious that Michael Bay didn't even either.
Yep.
I have to say this. Your pain at the lack of the writers caring about the lore of the Transformers franchise pales in comparison to my pain at a certain other set of writers not caring about the lore of a certain other franchise that I won't get into. So,
well, that's kind of me when any writer doesn't care about the lore franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like that's a painful time during your franchise. It's just like not the writers just obviously not caring about it and being frustrated by that is the worst. So
and they should know that if they disregard it, it's only going to bring more pain for the studio when all the fans are in an uproar.
Exactly. So we gotta move up thing to talk about, and we're already a little bit over. So can I get some final thoughts on the Transformers franchise as a whole from you guys? Until we talk about Bumblebee, obviously. Yeah. Well, the franchise 5. You know what? Each of you gets 2 minutes. Talk about whatever you want.
I can sum up my thoughts on Transformers like this. It's a series that means a lot to me, for better or for worse, because I grew up watching the original 3. I do think there are some cool special effects and some cool action scenes, and heck, even some characters that I started to care about. I only wish that the people behind the movies cared about as much as I do on the series. That is really covering most of what I have to say about the series. I wish the people behind it cared as much as we did. I think there's some cool action scenes. I just hate the lack of continuity and the fact that they just kind of just were like, yeah, screw it with each movie. But I hope one day we get a complete reboot. Like I know Bumblebee is like a semi reboot, but just complete from the ground up reboot, and they just adapt the show, or just take the Transformers Prime cartoon and just adapt that.
Right.
It's a series that means a lot, but to me personally, but constantly finds a way to disappoint me or just make me mad in the case of The Last Night. But at the same time, anybody who thinks that Transformers is the worst series of film of all time, or any of the films in the series are one of the worst films of all time, are not looking a lot at other films, because while they are not great, there are certainly worse films out there than in this franchise. Because they are competently made in every facet except the writing. That's pretty much all I have to say. Is just I am glad to be done, and probably will not touch anything other than Bumblebee for a good couple years.
I would strongly recommend watch Bumblebee and then watch the original 1985 or 84 movie.
I mean, like I plan on watching Bumblebee and the other cartoons, but I mean, like of this core franchise of 5 films,
yeah.
I don't plan on touching them again for a long time.
Completely fair. For me, is it cool for me to?
Go ahead. Yeah.
For me, 1 through 4, no matter my complaints about those films, I enjoy them. I like them. They're a great time. 5, how dare you? How dare you? And then Bumblebee is probably my favorite next to the first one. So the that's my thoughts. 5 breaks me.
Okay.
I can't sit through it.
Well, that's just depressing. I'm glad we didn't do this as the last topic. Because that would have been a really depressing thing to end on.
Yeah.
So let's move on. And
before we move on, how are we doing on time?
I know it's been over 2 hours. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. Do we how are we feeling on doing on time? Because I know we want to cover our final topic, but I also don't know how much longer you guys want to go over.
We can go. I mean, I think my thoughts, especially spoiler free, because I assume. Sorry.
Yeah, I would prefer not spoilers.
Oh yes.
Assuming a spoiler free conversation, my thoughts are pretty basic, one way or another. So
yeah.
I wouldn't say we'll go for more than 20 more minutes or something like that.
And
let's go ahead then.
And according to this the stream, it's only been 1 hour and 57 seconds.
Oh yeah, you guys go ahead then.
Yeah, we're not as over as we thought.
We should be good. So, Caleb, give me. I haven't really heard some general thoughts from you about Final Fantasy VII. So, will you please lead us off with your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake?
I loved it. It was amazing. It was so good. To give context to viewers at home, as you all know, I'm a big fan of the Kingdom Hearts franchise.
As am I.
I have been introduced to these characters through there, specifically Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa.
And Zack.
And Zack, yes.
Oh, wait. Sorry. That's kind of a spoiler. Anyways, go on.
I was just gonna embrace it and just like move on and just like.
I'm so sorry. The trivia part of my brain was just like activated and was like there's this character too. Before even realizing that that's a spoiler. So
Sorry,
I'm
y'all.
so sorry. Anyways.
It's okay. I don't think Sawyer would realize what we're talking about anyways.
If you hadn't have even mentioned it, I probably wouldn't have picked up on it.
Right.
Really, for being honest.
So anyways, keep going. My apologies.
You're fine. It's all good.
So anyways, you're talking about being introduced to these characters through Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, so I've been introduced to these characters, and to give a little backstory, just real quickly, because I have talked about this before. I have recently got myself back into the Kingdom Hearts franchise within relatively 2.5 years ago. I think 2.5, or it's just 2. One of the two. But so I was relatively new. I'm relatively back into the franchise, and I'm loving it. And I was very faced with the decision of whether or not I wanted to play the original before this game.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't play the original.
Really?
Yes. I'm not trying to knock the original or anything, because I definitely from what the story tells me from the Kingdom Hearts games, I'm intrigued by the story the most, and
yeah.
The reason why I say I'm glad I played the remake before the original, because the story is completely fresh for me.
Okay, I get you.
But yet, because it's fresh, there's also what this remake relies a lot on is nostalgia. And I still get that nostalgia through the Kingdom Hearts games from when I was a child and to now. I'm not saying my nostalgia is equivalent as the people who played this game, the original.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I still get that sense of nostalgia, and I have been anticipating the remake for a very long time. And this remake didn't disappoint, and I think even in this story, all of it was a bunch of twists and turns, and I liked it, and it was nice to go through it without having no prior knowledge of where the story's going to go.
Okay.
Or what the difference is, and I love the game length. It's by far probably the longest game I've ever played in a single playthrough. Clocking in at, for me, was 38 hours, but it could have been easily 40 had I played my cards right.
I finished it in just under 30 hours.
So you didn't do the side quests, didn't you?
I did do the side quests.
Oh.
I did every side quest.
You got it done in 30 hours?
I play games mad quick for some reason. I don't know how I did it, but I did it in 30 hours.
That's shocking. That is shocking. But I guess I was probably more...
I work fast.
I was probably exploring a lot, I'll be honest.
Oh, I could see that.
Looking for chests every corner,
I also, whenever a game will let me skip dialogue,
okay.
I will. If it gives me text that I can skip, I will skip the text. So I don't sit around waiting for Cloud to finish grunting. I press that circle button, and I get on with the cutscene. I do that in every RPG I play.
Okay.
I just don't have the patience.
Well, I will
I
say
loved it, but I didn't have the patience.
a lot of the in-game dialogue though is very funny.
Oh no, I didn't skip the dialogue. I just skipped the voice playing out
Oh,
like a
okay.
bunch of the times. Like the
Oh, I
text
see
will
what you're
actually
saying.
let
Yeah.
the text will let you skip, and I will often skip that text, especially during side quests.
Yeah, I was watching
During
some
side quests,
gameplay
it's
of that
just like,
earlier. People doing that. So
yeah.
yeah, I know what you're talking
So,
about. But yeah, that could be a factor. Anyways, I think this game is, and also like, it does harken back to, the old PlayStation 1 days and the tropes of video games during that time, and it's just like it. It was nice to have like this game of like of that full on like what games used to be, and then mixed with now. It is just, and the characters I loved, and I loved the voice acting. Everyone, and
yeah.
it the combat is absolutely amazing, except for maybe the air combat. But
What air combat?
exactly.
Yeah.
um,
I was saying to myself when I started this game, like, man, I want to jump so bad.
yeah.
I just want a jump button.
Well,
What
it's
are
like,
they? Part of the problem is that they're using all of the face buttons for other things.
yeah.
I get that. But like, wait, what are they using the X button for in the overworld?
Command menu.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's no way to have a good jump button in that the way that game is structured.
You could also have just kept, because the command menu has actually 3 different buttons to it. It has L2 and R2 and then X.
That's true.
So you could have easily just kept L2 and R2 like the command menu, and then have the X button. But tomato.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just jump in with my thoughts. Yeah, I loved it too. I think I don't mind the Nomura isms at the end.
I don't mind it either. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Kingdom Hearts, so it doesn't bother me. It does make me question whether or not the original be faithfully recreated, and what the response to that is going to be based on the results. But that doesn't necessarily matter for this game. I think this game is really good, really well put together, really polished. I think like the story and the voice acting is really great. I love Barrett. I didn't love him in my playthrough of Midgar in the original. I thought I just thought he was standard. But like he's like a really great character. I love all of the characters actually. Like I don't think there's a single character I dislike in terms of like enjoying them being on screen. I love the expansion of the story, from like getting a little bit more on Cloud and Tifa's relationship, and then like fleshing out how Cloud and Aerith grow closer and stuff. Like I loved that. The game is super pretty. It's probably the prettiest game I've played since Kingdom Hearts 3, I would say. Some gameplay stuff. I like the combat 70% of the time.
Okay.
But I think Tokyo Team is not great at enemy design.
Enemy design, you said?
Yeah. Well, not in terms of the designs themselves, because the designs are fine.
Right.
But in terms of how the player interacts with those enemies, it can get a little grating at times. Like, I found myself fighting the combat system, fighting enemies in ways that the combat system didn't feel built to support. The example I can think of off the top of my head is uh, there's a side quest where you have to go and save a few things, and then there are these like 3 drones that don't have any weaknesses you can exploit, don't have, but then also resist all of your physical attack, which would be fine if their health pool was small, but their health pool is not small, and they do a bunch of damage. So I was just like painfully trying to beat them, and I beat them, I think, in 1 go, or maybe it was 2 goes, but it took forever. It was easily the longest fight in the game, aside from one of the ones at the end, which is basically just like forced into being as long as it is. And so like that was an example to me of the enemy design being just kind of not tailored to the combat system. But other than that, I really liked the combat. I think it's a cool version. Like, I liken it to Tales combat, which I don't think I've seen a lot of people do that, but it's very similar in terms of like you have an encounter and you go into battle mode, which changes from field mode, which is not what happens in a game like Kingdom Hearts. Like, enemies just appear in Kingdom Hearts, and then you fight them, and then like nothing about your moveset changes. It's just the enemies appear. So I liked it. I liked the kind of management system they had. With a little bit of refining, I would love it even more than I do. Give Dodge some invincibility frames, please. Like, I don't know why I'm punished for dodging. That doesn't make any sense. So that's my biggest pet peeve, is that Dodge doesn't have any invincibility. But other than that, loved it. Can't wait for the sequel, and I can't wait to see where this goes. Yeah, that's my thoughts on the game.
Personally, I pretty for the most part, I actually really liked. I really liked how the combat system worked. I felt it was different enough than any other combat system that I have played. I do kind of see your thing with the dodging mechanic. My only problem with the dodging mechanic is the distance. It's not necessarily.
I can see that.
It's not necessarily the invincibility frames, but like when you're playing as let's say Barrett or Aerith, those two, when you're dodging, you're barely taking that much distance, which is that's where the punishment I really feel comes in. And
all I care about is buff dodge. I don't necessarily need it to have invincibility frames. I just want it to feel useful, and it doesn't. That's my thing.
But I will say, like, I really I'll have to disagree that I actually really liked how each boss was designed, because
I loved the bosses.
Just
some of the encounters angered me more.
Oh, okay.
That's all. That's all I'm saying. The bosses are all great.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I would agree. I really loved a lot of the boss fights without giving any of them away, but they've all felt uniquely different than the other for the most part. Some of them there was some repetition, but I wouldn't even call some of them actually boss fights. I would almost call some of them as encounters. But
the boss fight at the end of the plate sequence is spectacular.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It's the one with it's basically Reno and Rude 2.
Oh yeah.
That one's so good.
That one's a great fight. There's just there's so many, and you know, the whole factor of like, you know, hack and slash is not necessarily the best option for all of them, but it could be an option for all of them, for some of them, and then, you know, more defensive game on some of the bosses, or even some of the bosses just having utilization of magic was, I thought, very good. My only problem with magic, this is the gripe I have with the combat system, is the magic takes just a smidge too long.
Yeah, I would say
especially when you get to the higher levels of them, where they take longer, which is you're playing a much riskier game using magic in the later portion.
So this is how I would change it. Either make, because you're already spending a lot on high level. So what I would do is I would say make like base magic take just a tiny bit longer, and then after that make all magic take the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or give ultimate armor on magic, and you can't be killed while casting a spell, just to protect the player from dying in the middle of making a correct decision.
Yeah,
that's all I would do.
Well, I would at least just do it with cure, kind of like how the Kingdom Hearts games does it. You know, where at least, you know, the leaf bracer option is available, where, like, you know,
you can't die while casting cure,
and because, you know, you could be hit with any form of attack that, like, knocks down your whole health, and, like, your immediate reaction is you immediately, you know, cast cure on yourself, but that there's too much of a delay before that next hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But these are really minor gripes.
These are nitpicks. Yeah, I agree. There are some basic combat adjustments we would make, but overall we really liked it.
Yeah,
is a good way of putting it.
I really love this game.
Yeah, I loved it too. I love how it just realizes everything in the original.
It's so fun. I laughed.
It's emotional.
I cried. Like, and I'm not just saying, like, I cried at the end. No, there were many points in this game where I got emotional. And there were moments where I really laughed. Like, the moment I actually really knew that I was going to love this game was I also didn't play the demo. So
you didn't. You just went in totally blind.
I went in totally blind. I didn't see the opening movie, which was awesome. I love that opening movie.
The opening movie is incredible. It's except for, like, after it pans down on Aerith, it's shot for shot the original, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's the same thing, except, you know, in glorious 2020
HD
graphics.
And it's all continuous, probably.
Yeah, like it's the same cinematic from the original, but spruced up and whatnot,
Interesting. I didn't know
and
that.
basically the same music.
Oh, see, I thought that music was a
Nope.
twist. Like that, I thought that was them.
Oh, no, no, no. Again, after it pans down on Aerith, everything
After.
before
Oh,
that
I thought you
is
said
different.
before. Oh, okay.
Sorry, no.
That makes
Everything
sense.
before that is different, but everything after the Aerith shot is different or is the same.
Yeah, that makes sense. It it's so good. Oh,
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna
great
say.
game.
I didn't play this in the demo. Like I didn't play the demo, so therefore I didn't get this line of dialogue that I just put a smile on my face and I was just like, this is going to be that game, isn't it? So it's like, you're all serious, you're going through the mission, and it's very action packed, and
Yeah.
and you get a guard that goes, "It's over," and Cloud just takes out a sword and he's like, "That's my line," and I just put a grin on my face because I was like, "Yes, it is your line," because he used that line a lot in the Kingdom Hearts games as well. So like that's another thing of a sense of nostalgia for me. Like it's like I'm finally getting his solo title type of thing, and it was, and the banter in this game is so funny.
It is,
and the cursing is so cleverly done. It's so funny.
They curse a lot, and it's like on one hand you're like, why, but it's also kind of funny. So
yeah.
it's like, how do you? I have mixed feelings. They don't do it too much, but they do it enough. I think it's like, well, and it's like they distinguish, like there are characters who curse, and then there are characters who don't curse,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's like the middle ground between that, which is pretty great. So
yeah,
great game.
Oh yeah. I don't want to give it away, but anybody who plays it knows there is one particular chapter that is so out there in like it being bizarre.
Wait, which chapter?
Well, bizarre being fun. That's a bit of a
are you
tone.
talking about like the ghost chapter?
No. That is another bizarre and different tone thing.
It is.
But that's not what I'm meaning more towards a fun, like laugh out loud type of chapter.
Oh, you mean the
You cut up.
You mean Don Corneo?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That particular
I
chapter,
love that chapter
was
much.
so fun and bizarre. Once you get to it, you know what chapter it is because it's very unique and fun. And I love.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I didn't like any chapter. Actually, there was no chapter where I felt like was remotely bad. There was one chapter where I felt was a little tedious. But again, I was having so much fun with the game that I really didn't mind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I tend to like complain while I'm playing a video game, but then I'm like, yeah, I loved that, and just move on with my day.
Yeah.
I would say like, as much as there are things about this game that like I don't necessarily like, I'm not the biggest fan of, I think this game is probably a solid contender for my game of the year.
Oh, it probably is. I would say confidently it is my game of the year. Confident.
Okay, confident. I like confidence. We like confidence on the Lab Rats.
Cyberpunk, I've been hyped for that, but there's much more layers to Final Fantasy VII as to the reason for my enjoyment in this game.
Yeah.
And I don't think Cyberpunk could match it.
Okay.
Last of Us does not have that particular element either. And that's assuming Last of Us even comes out this year. But
we've already talked about it, but yes.
I love this game. I would give it a 10 out of 10.
I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Yes. There are just enough things that bring it down from a 10 for me. That's all.
That's fair.
So, all right. With that, I think it's time for us to go. It's very late in the day for us.
Mm.
I am definitely looking forward to playing Final Fantasy VII because that's quite a lot of high praise.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you should. I think you will quite enjoy the game. As a Metal Gear fan, I think you will quite enjoy the game.
I am definitely looking forward to trying it out.
Obviously, for you, you know, whether or not you want to play the original is up to you. You know, obviously, there's no wrong answer. Is basically what I'm getting at. Whatever way you choose. So I wouldn't burden yourself into whether or not you want to play which is which first. I will say though, you will have a big debate on whether or not you want to play the original after this one, because you're like, you don't want to get spoiled. So it's like, big debate.
So a good rule of thumb for this, Sawyer, is everything with the ghost. Wait, no, that doesn't help. Never mind. Forget I said anything. We'll talk after you play the game.
Okay.
But definitely play it.
Yes, definitely play Final Fantasy
and
VII
it's
Remake.
Worth the full price.
Yes.
Out of any game that I've played, this is the most worth the full price. With 40,
it's probably going to be, considering I'm starting an Assassin's Creed marathon at the moment. So
I get it.
It's on my list for sure, but it's probably not going to be for a little while.
Yeah, that was actually more of yeah.
Just make sure you play it.
It's worth it.
I definitely plan on it. There's so many games that I like, I definitely want to get to that, but it's going to be a while.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, with that, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. What episode are we on? Like episode 45?
45, correct.
I think it's 45.
Yep.
Nice. Episode 4. We'll be at episode 50 in 5 episodes. That's exciting. So, Sawyer, can you rattle off the social medias for us?
Yes. So you can find us at Cascade, at CASTCATE on Twitter because of our old handle, but you can find us just by searching the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast, as well as on Instagram as at the Lab Rats Podcast. We don't post there much, but Twitter's where as well as the fact that on Twitter we have a system where every time we upload a new episode, it will auto-tweet out a link to the new episode on Podbean.
Mm.
And speaking of Podbean, you can find our episodes wherever you're listening now, in addition to Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, as well as, what's the 7th one now? Oh, Twitch.
Yep.
We found the mythical 7th episode, and it was added, or 7th service, and it was added 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
It was added 3 weeks ago. We now are streaming live on Twitch, and you can also find, I believe you can find our archive episodes on there. Is that correct, Ezra?
Yeah, we should be able to.
What on Twitch you say?
Oh, the archive. Well, do we not archive our streams on Twitch?
For about 2 weeks.
Okay, for about 2 weeks you can find archive episodes, but you can find the same episodes on the other services that I mentioned.
And you can listen to them easier on those services. So
and then
only tune into the Twitch if you want to be live.
Yep.
Yes.
So yeah.
Be on the lookout. Eventually, be on the lookout. I would probably bet this more towards the end of May because it's just the way classes are winding down, be on the lookout. I will have a video review of Final Fantasy VII.
Ooh,
Okay.
Yep. Exciting.
Oh, and we should probably mention...
I'm going to hold you to that.
Oh, yeah.
We should also probably mention, just in case anybody is wondering, Ahmad still is part of the Lab Rats Entertainment podcast.
Yes.
He has just been quite busy. So don't worry, he's still part of the show, back. And he is okay.
This is like this is like those MCU end cards where it's like Ahmad will return.
He will return in probably whatever the next phase is, whatever we label it on YouTube.
Right.
Phase 4, yeah. All right. Well, I just wanna say before we sign off, I just wanna get up on my soapbox again, and I will do this until it's over. Please stay inside. Yes. Don't go outside. Well, go outside, but don't social distance.
Don't leave your property.
Leave your property and go to a park. Just don't
I thought the parks were closed.
You could walk around.
You can you can go walk around.
Yeah, you got that.
Don't go to a playground, but do go walk around outside. It's good for your health.
Yeah. Take a walk around the block.
Yeah, ride your bike. Do stuff like that. But social distance. Stay inside. As much as I defend the right to protest, I also think in this case, it's probably better for your health not to. So please stay inside and play some video games, watch some movies. Now is a great time for it. So yeah. With that, thanks so much for listening. I don't want to commit that we'll be back next week because this is that time of the semester where things are just ramping up. So we might end up having to take a break for the next couple of weeks, what with finals and the end of the semester. Well, in any case, we'll keep you posted on that. We'll definitely be back around mid-May if we don't have another episode for a few weeks. So thanks so much for sticking with us.
Thank you.
And with that, bye.
Bye.